Okay, we are live now. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Okay. All right. I'd like to call anybody that's watching. We started on time, but we had some technical difficulties. So we will call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order. And once again, for the record, we will do a roll call.
Freeman.
Aye.
Mobian.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
All committee members
Did
are
you-
present.
Okay, very good. And again, for the record, if we could have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor, please let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, very good. We have, this will be our third reading on our one piece on the old agenda. And I would like to go to Ms. Goodrich, if you could please give us a bit of an update, and then we will go to committee for questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Freeman. Yes, I just wanted to go ahead and state that this is the third reading. We have answered all questions submitted by council persons to the Finance Department regarding the piece before you, and have provided information about the public sessions that will be held on October 28th and continuing through the future. So without further ado, if there's any other questions, we'd be more than willing to handle those and address those today. Thank you.
Okay, now I would like to go out to President Somerville and ask that you offer your comments, and then we'll go right to other committee members as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank all of council. Over the past few weeks, we have had very healthy debate and really great conversation about this once in a lifetime opportunity that we find ourselves in, and that is in spending these ARPA dollars. And through these conversations, we have made an amendment. So that amendment is before each and every one of you. Out of these conversations, council leadership has pinned our commitment to this body, but also to the residents of Akron, where we're going to be very intentional. We want to raise the bar in terms of accountability, transparency, and communication. And so we are committed to holding 12 public meetings. Again, we want Akron's residents to be the drivers of the conversations that council will have in the next weeks to come, but also make sure that Akron residents' voices are heard so that we can really identify, what are some of the real needs and prioritize those needs around spending these ARPA dollars. So we're asking all council members to hold a ward meeting so that residents have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about ARPA, but also giving residents an opportunity to share their ideas, their proposals, what needs are happening in and around them in their particular neighborhoods. And so we're asking, I know that some council members have set those listening sessions up. We're asking that you reach out to Sarah. She can help and arrange those. We also want to make sure that we improve communication around the horseshoe. And so leadership is dedicated to making sure that as meetings happen, this body will get updates in terms of what those meeting discussions were, the agendas, the outcomes. You did get an example of that last week. And on every one of those updates, we want to hear from council members. Give us your feedback. If you have questions, if you have concerns, we want to make sure that we're able to address those and we're able to incorporate your voices as well. So thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to kind of give an update in terms of what we've been working on since the last time we have met.
President Somerville, let me go out to Mr. Malik, if I could, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, President Somerville. Today, we're being asked to vote on this ordinance that authorizes the mayor to spend all $145 million that the city is receiving through ARPA, half of which we won't receive until next year. This broad approval is coming before council has the opportunity to review and deliberate on the specific projects that will be funded, both the 18 projects that have been identified currently and the untold number of projects that will be identified in the next several years. And it's also coming before the opportunity for detailed presentations on these 18 projects, and also before the opportunities for citizen input that we've talked about. And I agree with Council President Somerville, these once in a generation funds are a blessing. They're exciting opportunity to make bold, transformative investments in our city. But the lack of input from council and the public is a missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity to have a real conversation about the investments we want to make in our city and to unify people around a collective vision of this city. I've sought to find a compromise. I've asked the law department to draft alternative legislation that would approve those first 18 projects. The 18 projects that were provided in this appendix from Guidehouse, right? After we have a chance to ask questions about them and have those questions answered. Last week, I reached out to Ms. Goodrich and asked specifically about what the estimated costs are for each of these 18 projects. And the response, which I appreciate, was that that information will be available in the weekly presentations that will occur starting next week. I also asked, because many of these projects are internal and some of them are external, which were external and which were internal, and for the ones that were external, what are the partner organizations that would help carry these out? And again, was told that that information will be available starting in those presentations next week. I continue to not understand why we cannot wait for those 6 presentations to ask questions and then to be able to approve those, to approve the uses of funds after that. It still boggles me. Council is, I want to be fair, right? I appreciate that the language is clarified in the amendment, that this money will need to be budgeted. But respectfully, having gone through the budgeting process twice now, particularly on the operating side, it is unlikely that the specific projects that are reflected in the operating spending will be shown in any level of detail that will allow for any kind of coherent debate and input about those projects, okay? Or any alternative project. The time to have that input is now, not later. And over the past 2 weeks since this ARPA ordinance was brought to council, a majority of council members have shared concerns. And we're still moving forward with this ordinance with the promise of more informal input in the future. And I absolutely am looking forward to hosting an information session in my ward. But I just want to be clear, good outcomes require good process, right? And the projects that the mayor has identified, they seem like worthy causes, right? A home rehab program that's desperately needed, $20 million investment in youth violence prevention. But when debate and deliberation doesn't include all voices, things get missed. Questions go unasked, like how $20 million is going to be managed and administered and coordinated when we have so many different actors working on things. Or on how we're going to invest some of this money in environmental sustainability, something that frankly we don't do enough of in this city, right? And again, it's not about the substance of what's in here. It's about having the opportunity to ask those questions. As I've said before, half of this money won't arrive until next year. None of the money has to be allocated until the end of 2024. The money does not have to be extended until 2026. I don't want to go over my time, which I think that was. But the reality is that this process is being rushed. And there has not been an opportunity for meaningful deliberation on these projects. I would encourage folks not to support this, to try to find something where we can all come together. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to go to Ms. Amobian next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've expressed this repeatedly that, and I totally agree that these are once in a lifetime dollars. That's why it's so critical for us to sit down and have input into the whole process. I see no reason why the mayor and his team cannot meet with the full council. And I'm willing to make myself available whenever, whatever time they want to meet. This is too important for us to not have our voices heard clearly. And I will make it my business to try to attend every ward meeting, as many as I possibly can, to hear the input from the citizens. I've heard from some already, and they agree with council that we need to make sure that the council's voice is heard. Now, one of the things that's really unclear to me, we keep talking about helping us with this process. I, for one, cannot accept the fact that we have an entity that we're not capping what we are asking them to do for us. They're just going to spend whatever hours and just give us an invoice that they spent X number of hours doing this. I would think that we would want to cap the number of hours in such a way that we can get a meaningful product from them without spending a whole bunch of money on administrative costs. I want most of these dollars to go to the citizens of Akron to make some meaningful changes in our wards across the city. And I for one, am not prepared to support this ordinance as it is presented. If we need to vote it out of committee today to get it to the full council, I have no problem with that, but I would not support it in the format it's in today. And I still don't understand the hesitation of the administration in not wanting to meet with the entire council. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, I think the next hand I see is you, Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share the concerns of my colleagues. First, we have a committee structure within council. And out of those committees should come council's goals and objectives for a plan such as this. So to circumvent that and just have 3 members of council isn't healthy. I mean, it's totally counterproductive when we talked about being collaborative. We're not even collaborating amongst ourselves on council. That's why we set up committees, for committees to set goals and objectives, not of that chairperson, but that chairperson leads that committee on behalf of all of council to make sure that all of council's goals and objectives are expressed. I also don't have much faith because we've constantly, this council collectively has pushed against transparency and inclusiveness and institutionalizing our work. What do I mean by that? 5 years ago now, 6 years ago now, 7 years ago now, this council passed putting the city's budget online so that we could track dollars and engage our citizens in the discussion process. We still don't have that tool in place. Think of how far ahead we would be if we had to institutionalize that and being able to engage our citizens and see how the choices that we make have economic impact on different category levels. We had discussed about putting our legislation online so that we could follow it through the legislative process. Think of how we would be able to engage our citizens and have them follow this process through. We don't have any of that infrastructure in place. And I'm sorry, Guidehouse is not the one to do that. We are. We have none of that infrastructure in place. So we're not utilizing our present committee structures to have any goals. What are our goals and objectives for housing for council? For park and rec, for all of, to even have that discussion, when this council new body first came together, all except for Councilwoman Holland, but when this new body first came together, we kind of even circumvented or usurped the authority to even come together to have discussion. So we have to put the infrastructure in place so that we can even be about truly engaging our citizens and ourselves in this work called collaboration so that we can move this forward. I agree with my colleagues. We do not have to rush. It is our responsibility to make sure that one, we understand what we're doing so that we can properly support the work of the administration, but also so that those who elected us have ample opportunity to participate in this process along with us.
All right, thank you. Gentlemen, you have to excuse, I've lost order here. I tell you what, I'll have ladies before gentlemen here. So Tara, Miss Mosley, if you would, please.
Thank you, Councilman Freeman. I too echo the sentiments of my colleagues, especially the sentiments from Councilman Malik. I am concerned that it appears as if we are writing a blank check to Guidehouse. It just appears that way. If this is not the case, we're having a meeting with the entire council body to help us really understand the purpose and the point of Guidehouse. Because for me, from what I've read in the papers, not gotten from this body or the administration, is Guidehouse is getting a blank check. It troubles me that I have to get information from the Beacon Journal. Clearly troubles me that this is how I'm getting information. That any of us are getting information, it should be troubling that it's coming from the Beacon and not from our colleagues, which we serve with. I think that council leadership and administration making decisions without including the other 10 members of council is a grave mistake. Playing the word game when sending out press releases, it is almost disrespectful. People in this community, when they hear council leadership, they assume that you're talking about the entire body. We know that's not the entire body, but the residents assume that it's the entire body. So when I have to explain to my residents, which I am explaining to them what that means, we are not being given a say in this. And that's the truth. But I would like to be able to tell them that we are all having a seat at the table and having a say in this, but that's not where we are. To say we're going to hold meetings and now we're going to hold meetings in our wards, which this is new information to me, after the fact negates the fact. What's the use of having a meeting after we voted on the legislation? I would rather us hold the meetings for us to get that input from our residents and then bring those things back to the collective body of all 13 members and saying, this is what our residents want to see, not to say after the fact, this is what they want, but we've already voted and said that we are going to allow the mayor, no disrespect to Danny at all, to make all those decisions for the whole entire city without input from other 10 members, we only the 3 leadership. That is troubling to me. It is troubling to my residents. To have those conversations with them and see the pause on their faces. So imagine how many of us who are serving those residents feel when we feel like we're not even going to have a say in any of this. I spoke with a council member today and talked about my frustrations of even when we go through budget and we submit the things that we want to see through budget. And a lot of us never see those things that we submit. I will have been here 8 years in January. And a lot of things that I've put on in over the years, they never, ever come to fruition, ever. So I don't want to feel like I'm having this dog and pony show in my ward for my residents to make them think the things they want and need in our neighborhoods is going to happen when the process during budget tells me, unfortunately, what I already know, that I'll put these things forward and they'll never happen. I'm thankful for the things that have happened, but if I put them on a scale and measure them, I get more of a no than I do a yes. And I just don't see what our rush is. I just don't see why we all can't have a seat at the table beforehand, so we can make a collective joint decision. When we keep saying we want to work together as a council, this is the time when we do it, when we have a windfall of money that's coming into the city. So then our residents can actually say, yep, they did something together. Because right now, this is not together, and I'm troubled. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fusco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask my colleagues to vote for these funds, for receiving these funds. I'm voting for $145 million to improve our city, to improve our residents' lives. It's the administration's responsibility to prepare the budgets. It's council's responsibility to review, adjust, and then vote on those budgets. Legislators legislate and administrators administrate. All will be done in terms of all of this effort that we're going to be undertaking the next few years is going to be done within the confines of the charter of the city of Akron, within the confines of state law, within the confines of the federal rules that we have to operate within. All of this will be done in that fashion. Nothing's really changed from the way we've done business for generations, really. It's up to a ward council member to go out and work with the administration, to work with colleagues in order to get stuff, to get improvements, to get programs within a ward. This is the way it's been done, again, for generations. We have the committee structure. There was an email that went out in terms of last week, in terms of the way this is going to be rolled, the way we're going to be addressing these. The committees, I believe next week, we're going to begin to have those meetings with the administration on exactly everything that is going to be rolled out. Last April, Mayor Horrigan announced the priorities and where they're going to be last April and where they're going to be. This past summer, Mayor Horrigan met with every single ward representative. I called and I asked for a meeting myself. Okay. This again is all going to be done the way it has been done in terms of the budgeting process. This is just the very beginning. It's just the first wave in terms of expenditures. We are going to see the budget adjustment next month that will reflect these expenditures by department. We will then receive the capital budget, of which we will then review, vote on, adjust, what have you, vote on, and then those capital budget items we'll get a second look at, okay? Also, with regards to the operating budget, we'll get that again in a couple months, and we'll be reviewing that. And I'm hoping everyone's going to be able to get their questions answered before they vote on those. It's up to us to review these, to ask those questions. Again, I'm asking my colleagues to vote in favor of this. This is really, in terms of the way we're going to be operating, this is really nothing new, and the infrastructure is in place right now, and it was in that email last week that reflected the actual portal that people can go to, in which everything is going to be reported in terms of budgetary and where the budgets are going to be moving, and what qualifies a nonprofit to get funding, And so this is going to be extremely transparent. But again, I'm going to ask my colleagues to vote in favor of this. It's been on our agenda for a couple of weeks now, and I'm going to vote in favor of the city of Akron receiving these funds. Thank you.
Okay, now next I'm going to be going to Mr. Lombardo, then I'm going to come over to Miss Goodrich, and then we'll continue to proceed then with Councilwoman Holland. Mr. Lombardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, almost echoing Councilman Jeff Fusco's comments. I too will be voting for these funds for the people of the city of Akron. Again, in the email that came from our council chief of staff, Dr. Joan Williams, she beautifully laid out all the points, how this, outlay of funds will be transparent, impactful, and it'll be a collaborative process. So, there's participations by the citizens and the community organizations, there's participation by us as legislators, and then there's participation by the executive office, Mayor Horrigan. And, I just want to say, I think that if we can all just exercise a level of trust and work together with one another, that everybody will, see the fruits of this blessing that we are going to receive. And, nobody's standing on the corner writing a blank check to, this organization or that organization. It'll be so transparent, again, with the portal that will be created. There's weekly presentations, okay? And, let alone any question that anybody would have, I'm sure the finance office would be willing to answer it, or we can communicate with the finance office, between Mr. Fricker and Ms. Goodrich there. They do an outstanding job of letting us know and preparing this budget that it'll just be good for everybody if we just work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Goodrich, I'm going to come over to you.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to touch briefly on Guidehouse. I just want to reiterate, we are not going to be monitoring what they're spending. They are here for compliance and audit purposes. These funds are going to be mirrored in regulation and laws that are going to be forced on us by the federal government. And as much as Steve and I would willingly want to take this on ourselves and learn that in depth, we just don't have the ability to do that. So to protect the city, and Mayor Horrigan keeps saying this is the greatest piece of insurance that we can buy, we are engaging them to help make sure that we are preparing everything from the outset to accurately report to the federal government, to be transparent through the dashboard, to report back to our citizens, and to make sure that we are not going to be subject to this money getting clawed back by the federal government. They're simply giving us advice and making sure that we are compliant with federal procurement laws, with the interim and final guidance that's coming out from Treasury. And we just do not have the capability to do this in-house. They're not spending the money. They're consulting with us and helping us make sure that we are spending this money correctly and that all of it is going to benefit the citizens of the city of Akron, and that we are not putting ourselves at risk in a future audit with the federal government. So I just wanted to address that. Trust me, Steve and I are going to be going over all the bills with a fine-tooth comb. We are trying to keep their engagement as minimal as possible, but this is something that we need because we just don't have the skills internally to navigate this very onerous system with the federal government. So I just wanted to touch on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I want to touch on the comments about Guidehouse. I don't think that there's any serious argument that compliance backup is necessary and valuable. I think that the question is a much more basic one. How much will this cost? And I think that that is really the overarching concern that I hear in many of my colleagues' statements today and on other days that we've discussed this matter. How much will this cost? It would be the height of sophistry to suggest that anyone on this council that anyone involved in the care and just the leadership of this beautiful city of Akron is against the healing and growth and possibilities represented by the American Rescue Plan Act funding. That's ridiculous. No one here is against this money or these opportunities. But I think just as we can all appreciate that it is unwise to empty out one's wallet and allow someone else to make decisions about how the contents of that wallet will be spent without any knowledge of what's in the wallet or what's being allocated to what. I think it's fair to say that everyone here has an interest and indeed a responsibility to understand the expenditures and the plans. And what we're being asked to do today is what we were being asked to do on September 27th when this first was rolled out to us. There has been an amendment made. I appreciate that that is the case. However, I think it's also important for us all to acknowledge that the meaning of the ordinance, Ordinance 2A, has not changed. We are still here today being asked to pre-authorize spending by the mayor or his designees for items that have still not been substantially explained or described. And never mind us for a moment here. Never mind those of us who serve in positions for the city of Akron, because really, never mind that, never mind us, we serve the people of the city of Akron. That's what we're here to do. And when I tell you that I have people who expect me to know and understand what's being asked here, I could not be more serious. I feel that this is my job and that it's incumbent upon me to ask these questions and take the position that I'm taking. So we've been asked to authorize Mayor Horgan to spend the $145 million federal award before the spending plans are shared in any detail or specific monetary amounts with either the public, whom we serve, or at City Council. I do understand that there are select members of our council who are referred to throughout this as council leadership who have received greater detail. The reality is that this has not been directly shared with every member of council. And as you've heard my colleagues express, that is of concern as well. The September 27th ordinance has been amended by its sponsors to soften the language, but the purpose and the concerns remain the same. You basically have, and by you, I mean the people of the city of Akron, some general information. We have what's been identified as buckets of categories of spending, which will be fleshed out in future budgets and spending reports. And the spending reports, I appreciate the explanation that both ARPA by its terms and a whole host of federal disclosure requirements mean that at some point we will have something of a real-time access to how money is being spent. And we will absolutely have a rear view mirror that will allow all of us, specifically as federal taxpayers, to see what happened to the money. I would humbly and respectfully suggest that that's the wrong timing for this. That rather, what we should be able to do is understand what the present plan is. And if I'm understanding the 6 to 12 meetings that are to happen very soon, and I want to say that I appreciate that this has been offered now. If I'm to understand that this is coming now, why not wait to pass this spending authority until those meetings have been held? Here's the thing. What we're talking about here is not whether the ideas on the table are good or bad. No one here is suggesting that this money is bad or that the ideas that we've learned about in the past couple of weeks are bad. They're great ideas to the extent we know and understand what they are. Candidly, I still don't know what these 18 some ideas will cost. And respectfully, I believe that few of my colleagues have that information either. The issue is not what's on the table. The issue is the table itself. My feeling
Chair,
is
the
this:
time is up.
we can pull more chairs up to this table, and we should. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Amobian.
You know, there was a statement made earlier. It is not the administration's job to design what we want. It is for the administration to listen to the legislative body and then come back to us to tell us how they plan to actualize what we are suggesting that we want. So it's always been a two-way street down here, but it's never been practiced that way. It's always been the administration telling the legislative body what they're going to do. But that's never been the way this was ever designed. There are three branches of government that have equal power, and they should be working together. And it's the administration that carries out the wishes of the legislative body and judicial body. So it's never been, and it should never be, that the administration goes back and decides what they want to do and then come and tell us about it. That should not be the way this should ever have been actualized. It should be a conversation and then tell us, again, I'm not opposed to the programs they are recommending and all of that, but how do we know that they're going to address these planks that we keep talking about we want to address? Youth violence and all of that. What are the deliverables we should expect from all of these groups? This is too important for us not to have this kind of conversation beforehand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I believe I'm coming to Mr. Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, there were a lot of comments that I appreciate everyone's comments that have been made. The comment was made by my friend and colleague from Ward 2 that this is about trust, and I agree. I go back to this appendix, which has the details that we do have for this first round of projects. And we look on the page about parks and public places, the Akron Youth Conservation Corps, the fund the creation of Akron Youth Conservation Corps through the Akron Parks Collaborative. Now that caught my eye because that sounds like a big idea. And I love Akron Parks Collaborative. I know many of us do. But I don't know anything more about this. And I'd love to know more. Right? I'd love to know how much it's gonna cost. I'd love to know what the thoughts are. The same thing with the other pieces on here. I think with the Lock 3 Vision Plan, I think the amount cited for this is $5 million, but I'm not sure. I think the same thing is true for Summit Lake, but I'm not sure. And so I would like, if I could, I honestly and sincerely just want to ask this simple question because it has not been adequately addressed. If someone can adequately address it, right? And I think it was the question that Councilwoman Holland was raising just when her time expired. If this ordinance, right, requires that all funds will be subject to a budget amendment before they are expended, and we're going to receive that budget amendment next month, and over the next 6 weeks, we are going to hear all the details to this and get those questions that I just asked answered. What is the harm in taking those 6 weeks and then authorizing the projects? And again, it comes back to trust because candidly and frankly, it seems that the concern is that this is a beautiful document and it was made with a lot of care, with a focus on equity. And I'm sure that's true, that it was made with good intentions. I'm sure that's true. I think the concern that is reflected in this process is that we will come in and muck this up, that we will come in and start poking holes in it. And that is a lack of trust. Because I don't know the balance of power between the administrative branch and the legislative branch. It's clear that we have a strong mayor system. And there's a lot of deference that's owed to this. like it or not from my perspective. But at the end of the day, we should be allowed to ask questions about this. And we should be able to do that before we authorize 3 or 4 years worth of spending, which is what this ordinance does. It's not just about these projects, it's about untold projects beyond this that we're being asked to sign off on. If anyone can address why we can't vote on this until after the 6 meetings, I would really appreciate it.
Okay. Going to come to Ms. Baylor. You've not spoke yet, if you would please.
As I've been listening to a lot of conversation, good conversation about all of this, I had opportunities to talk to some of the administration, had an opportunity to talk to the mayor, which I think that we all have had these opportunities to further educate ourselves about what is happening. I don't think that any one of us would know how to go about dispensing, allocating, and all this $145 million. We definitely needed help. Just like Shelley Goodrich said, they got the help. We can't afford as a city to go out and do this on our own without maybe being in violation of some of the regulations and mandates that are been put forth by the federal government. These funds have been earmarked, and I'm sure that many of the concerns that were spoken of, they will be addressed if they are in compliance with the earmarks that for which the money has been designated. Now, protecting the city and the government through having advisors, that's a wonderful thing, and that is truly what we needed to do. And in that, it was spoken that it's not going to be overbearing. They're not going to be using guidehouse in areas that they don't need them, and they're going to limit it when they hear whatever it is that guidehouse is saying. If it's not practical or financially smart, I trust that they will not do whatever it is that would take us in a different way where we're spending too much money, because the purpose of this money is to help the people that are in need. You say 6 weeks, 6 weeks could make a difference between whether somebody lives or dies, have their rent paid, or another need, a dire need of survival be addressed, housing, whatever. We don't need to hold up taking this money in. Now we can squabble about this, that, or the other, but people's needs they need to be met now. It's not like down the road that some people can wait. We need to address some of the issues that are out there now. And the portal and all the other things that are coming up, the meetings and things like that. And this is ongoing. This is the first phase. We'll have other opportunities to address some other things, but we need to get this money in so that we can do the things that our people need. This is for the community. If we keep holding up on it, squabbling this and that, and don't take any action, we're delaying somebody's needs being met. And that's what the money is here for. And that's what we are here to do, is to help meet the needs of the people that we serve. So that's what I wanted to say. So I'm going to vote in support of it, because I believe that we need to be getting this money in so that we can allocate it to meet the needs of the public right now, as soon as possible, and do ongoing things that are going to be definitely with the input of the community and each and every one of us. So that's my little piece, and that's where I am.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Baylor. And I would like to come to Ms. Mosley now.
Thank you, Councilman Freeman. With all due respect, I enjoy concerts at Lock 3. go down with my family when they have festivals down there, but Lock 3 is not an emergency. It's not. They're going to get funds anyway. So that's not an emergency. 6 weeks is not going to bankrupt this city. If we're saying that if we don't approve these funds in the next 6 weeks, our city is going to fall apart, we are already in trouble. No, we're not there yet. These funds are wanted by everyone on council, including those of us who have concerns. So I want to make sure I state that for the record, because I know how things could get lost in translation in this city. They'll think some of us don't want these funds to come into the city, and we all want these ARPA funds to come into the city. We're just saying that we want a seat at the table to make sure the needs are being addressed across the city, not just the wards. We'll talk about the neighborhoods, and I thank Councilman Connor for supplying me with each one of those neighborhood breakdowns. So we're not only talking about wards, we're talking about neighborhoods who all have different needs and concerns. And to say that, but this is the way things have been done forever, well, maybe we need to change how things have been done forever down here. I think that's what we need to do. If we're going to say we're going to work as a collective body and do something for this community, waiting until some meetings happen across the city is not going to bankrupt the city. I think it would give everybody a little more intel as to what will be done with those funds. And maybe some of us who have anxiety about not having a say, maybe it will relax us in some of those areas. But how can we be relaxed in those areas when we don't even know? Or we find out a couple of minutes before a meeting. I just don't understand what the rush is. We have until 2026 to spend these funds once they are approved. And I'm sure the votes are there to have it approved, but we're saying, let's do this the right way. Let's do this the right way. Thank you.
All right. So we've gone through several rounds of conversation. Is there a motion? Does somebody want to move this before council and see?
Mr. Chair. Yes, sir. I have my hand raised.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Neal, go ahead.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate the dialogue. Understand, this is what democracy looks like. This is what discussion looks like. I want to stress this point. My concern is, as Councilwoman Mosley said, the statement was made, we'll do this the way we've always done things. That's the problem. That is the problem. Do you understand that cities got their allocations based on equitable metrics that were used to disperse these funds? They looked at a city's poverty rate and its housing instability. They use equitable metrics to disperse these funds to the cities. We don't have equitable metrics that we understand on how to disperse these funds throughout our city. But these funds came to our city based on equitable metrics. That's why Akron, Ohio got just about as much as Columbus, even though Columbus is bigger than us. That's why Cleveland got over $500 million because of their poverty rate. They looked at the metrics on how COVID impacted communities and use those metrics to disperse those funds. So why would we not have metrics in place to see how we're going to disperse those funds throughout our community? Because let's just deal with youth violence. Equitable shares means that those communities that have been identified as hotspots don't get equal amount, get more. What does that look like? If we don't have metrics which try to decide that, there's no way. Business as usual will not work. Business as usual has created the disparities that exist in our community that have been outlined by the Brookings Institute. So, I just stand firmly with my colleagues in saying that we have to have this discussion And after we have clear understanding of how we're going to allocate these funds and what the plans are and what the costs associated with those plans, then we approve. Because that is council's responsibility. That is the legislative body's responsibility. And it's not being adversarial, it's bringing balance to the decision process. So I want to stress this. These dollars came to our community because of metrics to determine equity across the nation on what cities would receive. It will behoove us to have equitable metrics to determine how these dollars are going to be invested throughout our city. Without those, it's left to how someone feels, emotion, political connections. No, we need to be able to document and show clearly to our constituents why we chose to invest these dollars in the communities that we do. And the way we do that is the same way the federal government can state why they sent the monies that they sent to each city across this nation, by using metrics that describe the equitable impact, the inequitable impact of COVID on communities. And that's how those dollars came to those communities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Lombardo.
Mr. Lombardo, you're muted.
You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to make a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report. Thank you.
Sarah, we don't need to suspend the rules on this. It's a third reading.
Correct. Since it's the third reading, you don't need to suspend the rules. You can make a motion for a favorable report.
And I'll make that motion for a favorable report.
Okay, then. There's a motion and a second for a favorable report. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let it be known by saying nay.
Nay.
Okay, if we could have a roll call, please.
Sure. Freeman,
Aye.
Amobian,
Nay.
Malik,
Nay.
Baylor,
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
The motion passes 3-2.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring that before council tonight. And I don't believe we have anything in new business. Thank you, everyone, for your participation in this meeting. And we will adjourn at 3:59. Thank you.
This is the final committee meeting for the day. Council will meet at